All right, welcome everybody to this edition of the 1% Better Production series, where we talk with experts in making production processes better. I've been lucky enough to meet many people with expertise in my 30 plus years supporting manufacturing companies. And our goal with this 1% Better Production series is to learn from these experts and share their wisdom with others who are interested in making their processes better. The 1% Better Production series is powered by FTQ Lab, where we help your teams gain insight into quality while saving time. And our guest today is David Gable. So David, thank you for joining us. I think this is going to be a great conversation. Let me give your background first before we start in on the questions. So thank you for providing this. Born in Midland, you spent 27 years in the automotive paint industry working with several Fortune 500 companies in North America, such as Harley-Davidson, GM, Mexico and US operations, Ford, Subaru, Toyota, Canada, Daimler Trucks North America, Volvo Mac. I know there's more because we've been talking about them, but that's a great list. So after retiring early, David put pen to paper and wrote The Dirt About Paint, which I mentioned to you, I have a ton of things I'd like to ask about. We have a lot of questions to cover today. If we don't get to talking about certain sections of your book today, we could do a second session, because I think we've got way more to talk about than we can possibly get to. So the book takes the reader through several chapters of successful ways to manage people and processes. It also covers pros and cons of 5S, lean manufacturing, and other disciplines. The book covers every paint process and shows real life examples, which I appreciated those, of how to troubleshoot problems related to paint and all the other processes in between. You spent many years as an assembly paint production manager and a contract foundry and paint facility manager for the cleaning industry. Book shows both sides of these two dynamics and the best practices to follow for continuous improvements in any plant. So this, you and I touched on this before, this book will help prevent managers or employees from being thrown to the wolves and give anyone who reads this book an upper hand to be successful in their job. Whether you're new to the process or a seasoned veteran, the reader will gain significant knowledge of the paint automotive business. And that is the exact same reason that we want to do this series, is to be able to help people discover that knowledge that's out there. So I just finished reading the book and I loved it. As with anything that you study, you can almost always learn something new. And I learned a number of things from your observations in that book and your guidance. So thanks again for joining us today, David.
Thanks for having me.
I've got a bunch of questions. If we can just start on those, if you're all right with that.
Rapid fire away.
All right. So this one I find very interesting because it's a big ask. What is one core concept you wish you knew when you started in the industry?
When I first got into it, set aside the foundry, because that's kind of where I cut my teeth, working for the working with the UAW and General Motors, and kind of, not really knowing a whole lot. The biggest pressure put on me was, stepping up the employees and things like that. I'm like 28 or 29 years old when I started, and I had a little bit of management in like restaurants, things like that. But probably the biggest thing I wish I knew more about was, how to be proactive, how to hit things from a standpoint of, not waiting for it to come to you, and then figure out how you're going to fix it, but kind of anticipate problems, and set up plans to, get in front of those issues and make sure that they don't happen, or if they do happen, like let's say on a typical day you lose 2 hour downtime because of conveyor or something like that. Well, what can you do different the next time to make that, conveyors are going to break, there's no getting around it, but how can you minimize that by 50% or 75% or 80% or whatever, how can you reduce that downtime? So that's what kind of got my head wrapped around, becoming more proactive in everything that I do. Like even going camping. I'll give you an example. I was in a training class with GMARA years ago when I first started in the business. And one of the things they asked us to do was, how would you wash a car? Write it out on paper. How would you wash a car? Now, I had experience, working as a car jockey at a dealership when I was like 15 years old. So I kind of, knew a little bit about that because I had to recondition the used cars coming in and the new ones to get ready for the customers. So I was taught by my uncle, who was a perfectionist. And so I wrote it all out and I read what I had written. And everybody's like, wow, I want you to wash my car. That's like really good. So, the attention to details, things like that, and being proactive minded is probably the biggest thing I wish I had.
Yeah, so I think about most organizations and that point of being proactive, and I'll use that example of the conveyor breaking down. It's going to break down. There's going to be failures, but unless somebody can hand you when you walk in, unless somebody has done all the work before you got there, you probably don't have a guide. There's no. There might be a PM guide, there might not be. If there is one, it's probably not up to date. So the proactive, I think of that as somebody saying, all right, who installed this conveyor for us? All right, I'm going to call them. I'm going to have them come in with a solid PM program and make sure that I've got all the right replacement parts on my shelf, and I'm going to engage with them. So that's the proactive way to do it, instead of having to learn the hard way, which is, oh, it just failed. Now what?
Yeah.
You can learn that way, but it takes a long time.
It does.
So you shorten the cycle by being proactive.
Yeah, I did that at Harley Davidson in the old paint shop. It was called Paint 91, and I was tasked with that exact scenario. What do you do to get ready? We can't have 2 RTOs on site because they're so expensive. The wheels alone were over $1 million at the time, and the carbon wheels. And so I looked at, like abatement fans. You lose an abatement fan, you lose the entire system. So what parts are going to go bad? And we went through that entire process and got all the extra parts and had them there visually, make sure that they were there. And that really saved us a couple of times because that stuff does wear out. It does go bad. I walked through one time with a guy who'd been there longer than I had. And I said, that abatement fan's ready to go. He's like, huh? What are you talking about? I said, I can hear it. I said, you don't hear that? He's like, no. There's just a little bit of a squeaky noise, where the belt was ready to snap. Within an hour, that thing snapped and it was gone. But it's, being in tune to your system too,
Yeah, that does take time. There are certain things that it's the only way is experience, but you want to minimize the requirement, and being proactive is a way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next question. How do you approach problem solving and continuous improvement?
Well, a lot of it is trial and error. Like you said, experience, you learn different ways. I've been fortunate enough to work for, various companies. We all had different ways, different processes. For me, it was, creating an effective dirt team or like a response team, however you want to call it. And again, proactive mindset. What do we do to reduce dirt? Like I'll give you an example of a dirt team that we started, which I was kind of shocked that the company didn't have one. I'm like, well, how do you solve your problems? Well, I already knew the answer because I was, walking the walk and talking the talk. And it was like 13 hours of unsupervised chaos. And, but they managed to get a product out, but it was always behind. The trucks are always behind. And so I looked at that, that process, and thought, what you can't do it alone. Number one, you gotta have a bunch of good people that are motivated, are passionate, to want to do well in your department, show results. I'm always been result oriented. I get so tired of people who are just, they talk about problems, and you offer solutions, and they just look at you with, like a deer in the headlights, and like, no, really, I'll take it on, and you don't have to do nothing, just let me do it. And they're still like, nah, we can't. So it's kind of a battle sometimes, but putting together a good dirt team with your vendors, your filter guy, your paint people, your maintenance team, your leads, your other supervisors, it always has to come from the top. You've got to have that buy-in from the top, because if you don't, you're just going to spin your wheels. This particular plant, our hoods were 50% fallout for dirt, fiberglass. So a lot of it came from the vendor, because it was a fiberglass, place that made them. They bring them in. It got so bad that they had to bring in some of their own people to help do the sanding, to get it ready for paint. And one of the things I thought, well, all that loose sanding dust and things like that is probably what's doing it. But I, again, walk the system, look at the problem, try to find out what's the root cause. First thing I found, we weren't tacking right. We're using an air hose to blow off the hood. I'm like, that's just a really bad process. I mean, most companies have, gotten rid of air hoses because people use them for cleaning the floors and things like that, and blowing dirt and dust everywhere. And so I instituted a new tack off process, just like when you chamois a car. What happens when you take your chamois, you run it off the fender. And if you run it back like this, you're going to take the water and put it right back where you just took it off. Tacking is the exact same process. You got to start from one end and go off the edge, and then look at your rag, and you'll see your dirt. You go backwards, you're going to put that dirt right back there. And in a lot of our defects, you can see the dirt like right by a headlight, right around that headlight edge. There'd always be an accumulation of dirt, and that's because of bad tacking processes. So what I did, I went in and put in the 5 mil foil, chemical 6222 tacky coat. I call it human fly paper. You could put this stuff on a wall, run up and jump on it, and you'd probably stick to it. I mean, it's that good.
Yeah.
The concept was any airborne particulates are going to fly around regardless of what you do, whether it's a dead zone or not. You're going to, you got dirt off your conveyors, you got dirt off your, like in this instance, hoods, things like that. As soon as they hit that air blow off, that stuff's just going to go flying up and fly right back down on top of your job. So the way to prevent that was to put that tacky coat in several processes in the ovens prior to and in the oven, because it's a high temperature tacky coat. And 50% reduction first week. It was that good.
That's
and we could have
amazing.
went further. Yeah. So
I'm looking for an entry in your book relative to this, where you talk about, where is it? So back to the dirt team, talk about an action register. And that, I think you also, somewhere else in the book, you reference a PDCA.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, what's your experience if you look through all the different places you've been? That PDCA is a pretty common type of process.
Right.
So I've heard there's that acronym sometimes comes out different ways, but Plan, Do, Check, Act is that's one of the main ones. But it's a recurring process, and it repeats. So in your experience, David, when you look at all the different tools that are out there to address that question of the action register, so you sit down and the team sits down and they say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Somebody's got to own that, the management and the tracking and the due dates. What are some of the best systems you've seen to actually organize and manage all of those tasks?
It's one of those things that it's like a living process. you could go in there, have a problem, and close it out. You fixed it, it's green. It could come back in a couple of weeks, So it's got to go back on that register, and where at do you put it? What priority?
Mhm.
So putting a priority on that action register is really important too. Some things are like low priority, might take a long time, might be like long-term actions to fix it. Some things are like, we can do this immediately and see results, or hopefully we'll see results. But picking the right champion, for each of those different items. Like I said, one person can't do it all. And, some of the cons to that is a lot of times people don't show up, they don't report out on what they need to do. That makes it a lot more difficult of a process. But like I said earlier, when you get a paint team or response team or whatever, and everybody has that passion to want to do good, show the results and things like that. And to me, a key to doing that, and just like I did even with my employees, my supervisors, when people do well, recognize it, recognize the team. If you got a newsletter in the building, take a picture of the team and, hey, this is what we've done so far, and this are some things we're working on, and always asking for help if anybody has some ideas on how to fix this problem. Because a lot of times what we overlook are employees who have been doing the job for 25, 35 years, and they're like, hey, I could fix that problem like this, but you never asked.
Right.
So getting that out there and getting more people involved is, to me, it's key. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not, but
Yeah, it does. And the follow-up to that. So you've got this process of managing those activities. Earlier, you mentioned the management buy-in. So let's say you've got a regularly scheduled team meeting for dirt reduction. How important do you think it is for the upper management to be at that meeting?
maybe not every single meeting, but it's good for upper management to be there, once a month, twice a month, no more than, or no less than that. What happens a lot of times, people get gun shy when somebody, say a plant manager or the person right under the plant manager, starts coming to the meetings to find out, okay, what are you guys doing? Well, how come you're not doing this? Well, how come you're not doing that? People start going, I don't know. I'll have to get out and think about it. They get kind of, I wouldn't call it starstruck, but more of intimidated, I guess, by that person's stature. Now, if you have really good one, like I worked with some really good guys that were, to me, every time they came in, it was like a welcome. It was like, glad to see this guy here. He's on top of stuff. He's involved. He's hands on. And I always like that about upper management. Personnel that would do that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also some that come in, they just want to, point fingers, and if they are kind of upset at somebody, one of the vendors or something, and they kind of target them, and I, sometimes I feel bad for them. It's like, oh man, hate to be in your shoes, and a lot of it again goes back to fiberglass issues and stuff like that. So things are sometimes out of your control to a certain extent.
Yeah, that the way that the management react or shows up to those meetings to me is so important. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that contrast. I've seen both also. People that contribute and people that take away when they're attending those meetings. All right, so next question related to all this is, how important do you think data is in this problem-solving process?
It's everything. I mean, without the data, what do you're just kind of, you got a blindfold on throwing darts at a wall. It's kind of, I always had people come up to me, whether it was a customer, one of my bosses, one of my supervisors. Oh, hey, we got a problem. Really? What is it? Well, we got, this lint. We're seeing a lot of lint in the paint. Okay, well, where's your data? Is it one vehicle? Is it two vehicles? Is it 5 vehicles? 20 vehicles? How many have you checked? And so you really got to drive down that process and find out, what's going on. And the way to do that is to, walk your system. And we'll take craters for an example. Craters are always a very difficult, thing to identify. And sometimes it's even harder to get rid of it. Sometimes they just come out of nowhere and they leave out of nowhere and you have no idea why. A lot of it, my theory is a lot of that is, somebody that day had, fried chicken for lunch, and their hands are a little greasy and they, don't get it all off and it becomes a problem. I've also been to, I was actually walking around as a job interview and at a plant. It was a sleeper truck plant, big sleepers in the trucks. And they walked up to us while we were walking around the paint shop, showing me around, like, hey, we got a major problem. We got craters, and I didn't say anything. I'm just there as a guest, basically. And they said, where? And they said on the side, just on the side of the sleeper cab. Well, that was just, down to one line. So should be pretty easy to narrow it down, I thought. So they said, well, geez, we don't know what to do. It's just, we're sanding like crazy. We're going to lose some jobs on the line. All this stuff was going on. It was getting critical. I looked at them. I said, what's your PM system on your air compressor? They looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I've been at other plants where, we go to the pit cocks because they're lined up all the way down the walls, to every booth. And you open that up and you'll get oil and condensation coming out of there. I said, you have a white rag handy? And they said, yeah. So let's walk over here. And I said, let's check it out real quick. So open up the pit cock, put the white rag under it. I had a little black and white puddle, clear puddle, oil and condensation. I said, there's your problem right there. I said, you follow this. That hose leads from here right up to your gun, right up to your sander. The air hose is flapping like this as they're sanding. It's flapping along the side of that sleeper. I said, what you've got is you got oil and you've got water going up through that airline. It's coming out just, minuscule droplets. You can't see them. It's coming out of your sander. It's probably dripping down your hose. So it's slapping against there. And I said, you're going in, not wiping that stuff down, and you're going to see the craters. And they're like, wow. I said, so first thing I would do is talk to maintenance, get these things on a PM as fast as you can. I said, go around right now and start airing those suckers out, open up the pit cocks. And anyway, I said, wipe down all your hoses, wipe down your sanders. I said, that'll be a preventative measure that'll help you at least through the shift to make sure the next shift does the same thing. I said, it'll get you through the next couple of days probably until this other problem, takes care of itself. So spoiler alert, I got the job.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So the data, what we see is the same thing. Without the data, you don't really know what to work on.
Right.
And you touched on what I'll call a corrective action. So there's containment of issues, there's also corrective actions, which are not the same thing, right? I think you talk about that in your book. They are not the same thing. One of the challenges that we see out there is when somebody does have data or when they have a problem, they go to the corrective action, they fix it, and maybe they put in they put in the containment and they get it under control. Maybe they put a corrective action in place, maybe they don't. 6 months later, the defect comes up again. And we find that there's very few places, very few organizations that have a good system of bringing that information back. How did we solve this before? Is this the same problem? Is it a different problem? Or is it a different root cause? So have you seen any good systems of making that connection and creating that repository that that allows people to sorry, hang on a minute. That allows people to, I'm trying to get you unmuted. Sorry, David, I hit you. You might have to unmute yourself. But allows people to easily connect back to what they learned before. So how do you turn that into not tribal knowledge? How do you turn it into group knowledge that's accessible? That's the real question I have.
Well, a lot of it is you need to have like a database, and again, going back to the dirt teams. When you identify something, first thing you should do is take before pictures, take after pictures of what you've done as part of your library, take pictures of the actual defect, take a picture of what caused it, have this in either a 3-ring binder, have it on a computer system, which is better, having it digitally saved, because your personnel, and I talk about this, personnel are going to come and go. And, when you've got a plant and looking at the big picture, whether you're mom and pop owner, the small paint shop, or, you're a big 3 conglomerate, people are going to come and they're going to go, but your processes I can change. So don't take this the wrong way, but your process should be out there and stay pretty much the same, unless you're going to do a continuous improvement, and change that process, but still that you've got a new process, but at least you have a process. You've got to make that process. So, again, an action register, there's one, I think it was Harley Davidson. I think we had a great big blown up blotter of our action register and kept it on the wall for, I'm talking years. We change it. There's a change. We, make a new plotter, copy, and put it up on the wall. But it was there for everybody to see what had been closed out, what was still open, what was green, what was red. Plant manager walks in there, he knows right away. The only question you need to ask is, why is this still red? But having that visual out there and capturing, that history of the defect is paramount to either, preventing it, or once it comes up again, like we talked about the conveyor, it's going to break. But can I not have a 2-hour downtime compared to a 20-minute downtime? How do I get there? And just keep going at it and at it and at it until you figure out, here's our best practice. Here's our, best way forward. This is how you fixed it last time. We got a plan. Let's get on it, take care of it. And that happened a lot. There was times where we used to have to wait till a weekend, to shut down the entire system to fix something. But I got, sometimes I get things down to hey, I can do this in 20 minutes on why everybody's at lunch, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to kind of work through it, think out of the box, communication. I always talk about this to people that I've trained over the years, and in my book, it's like, it doesn't say Harley Davidson communication, doesn't say General Motors communication, but it seems like that's the biggest problem that all these companies face every day: lack of communication. And whether it's like the data, or just talking to people, having your team meetings, safety town hall meetings, all that stuff is just so important, and it shows everybody that you really care about the process, and you care about fixing things and making things better for them. I used to tell people, I used to challenge my employees. I'm like, I'm always on them for taking too long for lunches and breaks. I said, you want some more butt time? I said, I'll give you more butt time. Start doing this process right here. I'll give you an extra couple minutes a day. So I guarantee you, I'm going to get it back. It's your job's going to be easier, and we're all going to look great because we're going to, reduce this stuff, and throughput's going to increase, and that's what everybody wants. So I did that several places, and it always worked. Well, except Buick City. Buick City is another old book.
All right. David, what do you think is the most common reason for teams to fail in their problem solving and continuous improvement efforts?
Lack of participation within the group and lack of participation from upper management. That's the two biggest things that I've seen that, and sometimes it's not giving the team the right resources, whether it's microscopes, whether it's the time. A lot of times it's the time. You can't say, hey, go fix this problem, but I still need you on the line, to put these bolts in this, vehicle while it's going down the line. You've got to sometimes suck up that valuable time of employees to take them off the line and, have somebody to replace them, whether it's a half hour or an hour, whatever that committee, needs. Because you can't just, again, can't sit there in a room and talk about it and then send everybody back out on the line and forget about it, because that's usually what happens.
Yeah. So lack of participation. That's, yeah.
100%.
Today, with today's environment of labor constraints, we see that is the biggest problem. Everybody is so busy because they have added responsibilities, or they don't have enough people showing up every day. We go to these meetings and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's
well,
a big challenge
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not saying that the people are making the wrong decisions. I'm saying those labor constraints really set you back in ways that you don't see it today. You'll see them in 6 months or in 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard the other day that there's like 10 million open positions in the United States.
That's crazy. That is crazy. So David, if you were teaching a class to people that were eager to learn, very much like you do in your book, what do you think would be the 2 most important takeaways that by the end of the class, you would want to make sure that your students learned?
Well, I guess the first thing would be to be proactive. Learn to be proactive, because no matter what it is, if it's even a mundane, everything runs like clockwork, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, be proactive, look for ways to increase your throughput, reduce your defects, reduce cost, put lean and 5S, things like that in place. Make sure that you're always looking to improve the process. There's always ways to do it. I don't think I've ever seen in all my travels a process that was perfect, or 100% could not be
Right.
tweaked just a little bit, and you've got to look for those tweaks. And again, get everybody's buy-in, but here's what you want to do. And you got to develop that culture. And again, it comes from the top, and it's got to go all the way down through the organization. Otherwise, I've been to plants where I'm the only one thinking that way, and it's like, why am I even here? I'm just here to be, to be that wall where those darts are hitting.
Yeah.
I at least want to be able to deflect,
Yeah.
but it's got to come from the top, and I think what people miss the most is they don't have that training as well. Like I talk about in my book, you get a guy tomorrow, there's a guy somewhere right now starting today in a paint shop that has no clue except that it smells and it's halfway clean compared to probably where he came from, right?
Yeah.
That's the only knowledge this guy has or girl has, So how do you fix that? Because normally, like I went to one company, I'm in class for two days straight, learning all the policies and things, about nothing to do with paint, nothing to do with my knowledge of it or anything like that. And then I'm thrown out there on the floor. Well, here's what you got to do. Get ready, have your track shoes on, because it's 13 hours of bing, bing, bang, bang,
Yep.
And
it's OJT, on the job training.
Yep. And unfortunately, when we look at these processes on how to continuously improve. Kudos to the companies out there that spend that little bit extra money and have some kind of training process, whether it's, hey, here's Joe, he's going to work with you for the next week. He's going to be by your side, teach you everything you need to know about the process, the people, and that'll give you at least a head start.
Yeah.
And that's why I wrote this book. Was to give somebody, here, read this and go get them.
Yep.
And of course, looking at 27 years of experience, the book could have been this thick,
Yeah.
but nobody would read it.
Right.
But I actually, my first thought was to make this half the size so you could put it in your back pocket, with a plan. So you can take it out and actually refer to it.
Yep.
But
Well,
lack of training is probably one of the key things that I think really hurt people. Is because I've worked with guys been there 2 years, and didn't know half the stuff that they should know because nobody ever trained them. They learn by. I had guys going to me. I've learned by trial and error. I mean, I learned the hard way. Like, well, we kind of all did, but
yep.
now I was fortunate. I had when I started GMARA, my first paint shop was Buick City. Worst paint shop in the world. No clue why it's closed.
Well,
They
David,
had a guy that was 27-year booth cleaner who walked around with me on third shift and 2 weekends and showed me every process inside and outside. Here's what you look for. Here's what the problems are going to be. All that. And I'll tell you, that information was so valuable. In fact, I dedicate Billy Brandon in the book. He was a great resource to have. Need more guys like that.
yeah, but it was all tribal, and you at some point captured it for that company, hopefully. Yeah. So David, we're going to switch over to what I think is going to be a technical question for you. We've got a guest that's on. Let me see if I can bring them on. Okay. So let's see. We have a guest from Unique Enterprises. And if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good morning, Mr. David, Mr. Peter.
Good morning. How are
morning.
you?
I'm fine. Yeah, good morning. This is Sanjay from India.
Hi, Sanjay.
How are you?
And I'm fine. I was in discussion with Mr. David for one book, that book, but I could not have some issues with the agency. That's why I thought today is the opportunity where I can attend the live webinar. So, in nutshell, my role is I'm working as a business other paint supplier, and I'm associated with paint shops for troubleshooting most of the time. So we are facing a lot of dust issues. So I think this is the right platform where I should ask some questions. And currently, I am facing some airborne dust issues at various customer levels. So, do you have any solution or suggestions how and to tackle such airborne dust issues?
Yeah. Yeah, I probably have a lot of them, but I might have a couple questions of my own. Is your dust related to the process prior to the wet paint process?
Yes, wiping even in the spray booth also, because airborne dust is very nano size, which we can't see. Rather, it's difficult to control in spray booth. And before painting, you can say sanding or IPA wiping.
Okay, so you're seeing the dust in your paint, and you have to spend time sanding it to fix it and repaint it.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have feather dusters, or do you do like a manual tack and wipe with alcohol and tack cloths?
Yes. In case of plastic parts, we are using alcohol, that is isopropyl alcohol. In case of metal parts, we generally clean or wipe it by a tago rag,
Okay.
which is tacky cloth, and then we start painting.
Okay. Several things come to mind. The first is you got to look at where the root cause of the dust is coming from. If you have a filtration in that area prior to the booth, you might want to look at a better filter, something that's a little bit more more of a micro, I don't want to say microfiber, but micron, like not sure, maybe you're using like a 65% efficient filter where maybe you need to go to an 85 or even a 95% efficient filter to kind of catch that dust particles. The other way to catch it, to keep it from blowing around, that I found very, very effective, and I've used this in several plants, is take 5 millimeter foil. This comes like in a big roll, about 3-4 feet long. You can order it however you want to, depending on the size of the area. Lay that down on the floor, use a tacky coat. Doesn't have to be high temperature. Now here in the States, we use a Chemico 6222, and it's a high temperature. You can use it in your ovens. I use it in vestibules, like an area going into an oven, into a spray booth. And anything that's airborne, coming off conveyors, coming out of the air, like say your air, building air, it'll capture that and it'll stick to it and it won't blow around anymore. I'll guarantee you'll see probably a huge decrease in your dirt. The other thing is to look at your process of your actual tacking. And Peter and I were just talking about this about 15 minutes ago. If you ever use a chamois on a car, when it's wet and you go to dry it off and you go like this, and if you wipe backwards, what happens? All that water comes right back on the area that you just wiped off. Tacking, using a chamois, either one is the same process. You're going to start from one end, go all the way to the end, and lift your rag. I've seen this every paint shop I've ever been in. People will wipe and then they'll stop. And what happens, you'll see a full dirt in the same spot on almost every job. And everybody's scratching their head wondering, where did that come from? Well, look at your tacking process, look at your filtration, even your building air. Like I said, I've seen paint shops that were, a couple thousand feet away from what do you call it? Like a big crater of dust, like what do they call those? A gravel pit. So these trucks are driving through and the dust is blowing all day long and getting sucked right in. Mexico. I worked in Mexico. Every time the wind blows,
Okay.
the sand would blow up. You go open up every single air house on the building, and there'd be this much sand on the floor. And filters have to be changed. They were spending money on filters like you wouldn't believe. But look at your filtration. Talk to your filter representative if you have one, and look at increasing your efficiency of your filters.
So I also have a question. Sanjay, have you done the microscopic analysis yet on the defects that you have?
Yeah, a few times I have done this, and where I find some lint is coming, threads, you can say threads are coming. So normally we go back as a backward engineering where such kind of threads having a possibility from the process, either from tagorag or any cloth which are being used, which should be lint free. So we normally take care of those part. And still sometime we find some dust, and we act on solvent combination of particular primer, base coat or clear coat. Sometimes the tendency of paints to become dry, it forms some agglomerate, and formation of dust is also possible during the environmental conditions. Those are the various activities we do. And now I understand there is one um, terminology or technology, what we can say, it is a dry fog humidifier, which can be also a area where you can control some dust. It's nothing but the atomization of good quality of water, say RO water plus air, and it has to atomize for some certain pressure, and whatever the fog generated will suppress the dust in the atmosphere. This is the one more solution I could find out, where I can reduce the dust at least 10 to 15% from atmosphere. So 2-3 ideas or 2-3 solutions I have. But apart from that, if any other solutions we can find, that's why I called ask these questions, because normally in our spray booth, uh, the air velocity is zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5. In such cases, we can't use such dry fog humidifier in the spray booth, and that time it is very challenging how to identify dust in particular spray booth applications, because of this high air velocity, the effect of the fog will not be there. So normally, the equipment manufacturer suggests when the operation is not there or no production is there, and that time air velocity is zero. That time we can consider this as a preventive measure to dust, remove the dust or reduce the dust in the spray booth.
Quick question on your air humidifier. Is that inside the booth or is that outside the booth?
Mostly it must be used outside,
Okay.
especially component loading, unloading, where you are doing excessive tasks. That time, during sanding and polishing, particularly sanding, lot of dust is generated,
Yeah.
and those dust it's very difficult to reduce. And dry fog humidifier is the solution where we can reduce substantially up to 15 to 20%, but not full. Mm,
And
but incidentally,
what
the
pro
advantage of, yeah,
what product are you painting?
what?
Yeah, are you painting automobiles, trucks, tractors? What are you painting?
Uh, Plastics, you can say automotive plastics, bumpers.
Okay, so you have like a
Plastic means, yeah, engineering plastics, bumpers, then body, even alloy wheels also. So where this equipment can be used to control airborne dust,
okay,
and
so
whenever the production is not there, for example, shift change or a longer shift change or maintenance time, that time this equipment will be helpful to suppress the available airborne dust during non-production hour, since air velocity is zero. So in that case, when the air velocity is zero, this fog will effective, because there is no air velocity. So this
Yeah.
is the solution which I can try and trying to reduce the dust.
hmm So Sanjay, um, I would think in your role as somebody that consults, if I understood you right, you consult on solving problems in paint facilities, that getting data is really important for you, getting good data, along with heat maps of where these defects are occurring. Do you
Yeah.
in this particular challenge that you have, can they tell you the types of defects? And it sounds like they can with the thread, but can they also tell you where those defects are located on the part? Do they have a heat map?
See, we try to identify the defects mostly on horizontal part. We are finding more defects compared to vertical parts. Yes, definitely,
Yep, makes sense.
horizontal parts are severity is more than vertical. Mm, that is the one part. Even I have some experience for alloy wheels where we could not see the dust during throughout the painting, even up to flash up zone. But suddenly, some alloy wheels where I have an experience where after oven we could see some dust, even though I clean oven inside with very thoroughly. Even that case also 2 to 3 particles, those are normally seen on alloy wheels. And if more than 2 to 3 particles, say 8 to 10 particles, an average, the repair ratio or repair work will go high.
hmm
That will hamper the productivity.
okay,
So these are the some, yeah.
I have a couple questions for you. Is your booth side draft or downdraft?
Downdraft.
So it's a downdraft booth. Does it have an automatic conveyor system?
Yes, automatic conveyor system for alloy wheel is a horizontal conveyor.
Okay. And so you're saying,
Even for bumper, it is horizontal conveyors.
okay. So you're saying that you're seeing dust inside the booth itself? The spray booth?
Yeah, spray booth. In some cases, I could not see, for example, alloy wheels, where after base coat, clear coat application, I could not see any dust, even till the start of the oven, or you can say flash off. But after oven, I could see minimum 3 to 5 dust particle. So that is very confusing. Sometimes I try to understand, even I clean the oven. So naturally, till the oven time, from say clear coat to flash off zone, till the oven time, there is no dust. I could see personally, and suddenly after oven, the formation of dust started, or the tendency of the dust starts. So something related to oven is the possibility, but we before the start of the production, we always uh, take care of the oven cleaning. But still, I am finding at least 4 to 5 dust particles.
Sanjay, did you say that you have read David's book?
I was in discussion with one agency to whom I coordinated for book, but I don't understand why this was not reached to me. Even I had a detailed message to Mr. David on LinkedIn, and I don't know what happened exactly.
So you never got your money back and never got the book back?
No, no, never.
I call I talked to Sanjay before about the book, and I talked to the publisher, Waterstones. Did
Yeah,
you work with Waterstones?
can you
Yep.
repeat again?
Yeah, I talked to my publisher. I talked to the Waterstones, which in
Yeah, Webstone, same, the same publisher.
yeah,
I
yeah,
had some communication with you earlier on email and LinkedIn always.
yeah. I was gonna
Um,
the book was gonna cost $200 for mailing.
Oh,
yeah. No,
wow.
in that case, if there is no solution, then I will again pay the amount and will try to take the benefits of the book.
There are some great sections in there about some of the techniques that David has used successfully to solve just
Yeah,
what you're talking about. And a couple of them he mentioned, but even if I, even if it's not the solution, I think that there's a lot of good reference material in that book that you're going to want to have the book.
yeah.
So
And I have one more question to Mr. David
Sure.
related to dust, particularly for alloy wheels. So, do you think any porosity problems of alloy wheels create dust uh, while paint application? Even we could not see those porosity while painting, but after baking, we could see those porosity as a dust. You have any such kind of experience, particularly for alloy wheels?
Yeah, I don't. Um, I said I've been part of a side draft booth situation where they do like the caps and stuff for alloy wheels for Honda and stuff like that, but not the alloy wheels themselves. But I know that there could be some static issues with that. I don't know. I'm kind of grasping here, but um, tacking that off the best you can, and look at your tacking process. Where the wheel goes around the rubber. Are you getting down in there and cleaning that part of the rim? Because I'm guessing, just in my head, seeing what I think I'm seeing is that there could be some opportunities maybe to clean it better, and maybe look at whatever solution you're using. If alcohol's not working, try something different. Maybe a mixture of, I don't know. Gotta be careful with this kind of stuff. I don't want to ruin any alloy rims.
So you mean try to IPA or isopropyl alcohol before painting on alloy wheels, which is fast evaporating and it will try to
Yeah,
remove some
yeah.
dust.
Well, I mean, do a trial. Take a couple rims and wipe them down and just try different things and see what works the best.
No,
And
no,
look at
that's why I had done a lot of experiment on this part, what you mentioned exactly or what you suggested. Now, in normal cases, we don't use IPA for alloy wheels, but even I tried this IPA for means very slow solvents also we tried for paint. In case of even IPA, which is very good quality and having high evaporation rate, that helps sometimes. But even using those IPA, I could not see dust in base coat, in clear coat, but even flash off also. But I could see the dust after baking. Say after flash off, sorry, after clear coat application, when paint is going to set in a flash off zone, that time I could not see anything, absolutely okay. But after oven I could see some parts. So what I thought, it must be generated during baking process. So
Yep.
we done some solvent combinations also. That will help me, rather that help me uh, in some extent, but not fully. Say at least 2 to 3 parts is acceptable, but 8 to 10 parts or dirt across the wheel is not acceptable.
okay. I know sometimes we've used a little bit of water mixed in with our IPA, and it's not always recommended. Like I said, you've got to kind of run some trial and errors to see if it'll work or not. But sometimes a little bit of water will
Mhm.
actually, pick up some of that stuff better. But you got to make sure it's dry before it goes in your paint process, or you're going to see craters. So that's where you got to kind of find that fine line. Again, I'm spitballing here. I'd get the 5 mil foil, put the beginning of your process. I'd line your ovens on the floor, about maybe 2 to 3 feet up on the walls. You can use like a high temperature tape. I'm not sure how hard it would be to get that chemical 6222 there, but talk to your chemical people there, see what you can get for a high temperature tacky coat. Use a roll on, doesn't matter. It's even if it's got lint on it, it's not going to hurt because it's going to stick to that stuff like it's never going to come off. You don't want to apply it directly to the
Okay.
metal walls because it'll bake on and you'll have a hard time getting it off. That's why the 5 mil foil has to be in place. So
Okay.
that will capture any airborne stuff that you've got. Now, I'd also look at your ceilings filters in your booths. A lot of times what happens, you'll walk away and somebody will stick a broomstick up there and open up the filter to let air blow down so it's cooler in there if this was a manual spray operation. So look for that as well. And again, clean your system from the ceiling filter all the way back up to your ash house, your air supply house. Make sure your ducts are clean. Make sure
Okay.
your filters are, filter frames are clean. Anything downstream from your first row of filters. It's very important because if there's any dust up there, if you've got a dusty environment that this plant is in, that dust will find its way through there, some way or another. I've gone as far as to shut off the lights in an air house and run a flashlight to see where any holes are to see that light coming out from the filters. Because dirt's going to take the least path of resistance. If there's just a little tiny hole the size of a pin, it'll go through there. It'll follow down through your system. So look for those kind of things. In your next cleaning, do that. And that's about all I can recommend without seeing the system.
Okay.
But take
So I
before,
can try those.
you know, as you're experimenting, make sure you gather information. And again, another question I've got before I tell you the next thing I want to tell you: are you scalping these products? Are you taking a scalpel and looking at the dirt under a microscope?
Yes, microscope, we see the parts, but I could not, to be very honest, I could not analyze that because these are the very fine parts, and I could say those parts will be vanished after sanding. So from that, what I understand, either it may be some uh, dried particle of paints, and those granules are forming but not seen in flash of zone, but could see after oven.
Yeah, flash off zones are notorious for being a dirty area because when you're in your power washing your booths, which I'm assuming you do with a power washer, they blow that stuff all over the place, and sometimes they don't get it all cleaned up. The heat comes out from the oven, bakes it. It either falls right off onto the part or becomes airborne particulates, and you'll see it that way as well. A lot of times it'll come off your conveyors. So make sure, I'm sorry, your carriers. So you got to make sure you got a good carrier cleaning system. You know, whether you're using a 40K
Mhm.
system, blasted, or you're using a chemical process, you know, whatever you're using, you know, make sure that you've got good clean carriers going through that system. But what I was going to say is your scalpeling data, being that you don't really have that, if you can tell whether the dirt is under the paint, is it in the paint? Does it look like it's on top, like it's like somebody took a shaker and shake the dirt on top of the process? That tells you where the dirt's coming from. If it's underneath all that paint, it's probably coming from the beginning of the system before it goes into the spray booth, okay? Or during the painting
Okay.
process, if you're using robots or manual painting, your gun tips, are they being cleaned enough? These are questions to ask, and verify. But again, your filtration, is it adequate? Is it 99.9% efficient filters in the ceiling? Because that's what you really have to have a clean air, coming down. Also, is your exhaust working correctly? Is your abatement working? Are you using an RTO, or how are you blowing out your exhaust out of that booth? But you got to find that fine balance, to make sure that your booth is also running positive. So when you open a door, if you put a piece of tape on a door that's opened, that tape should be blowing out the door. If it's sucking in, then you're getting dust in from your outside environment. Okay. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So
That
those are,
makes sense.
yeah, that's some things to look at. And the way to fix that is you can usually got to adjust some louvers up in your baffles, up in your plenums, and try to get that system a little bit more balanced. I mean, I would start off with a velocity meter, just kind of check 4 different points of your paint booth to see what your CFMs, your cubic feet per minute, what's coming down. It's kind of difficult to do your exhaust. It's I don't suggest doing that on your own, but those are just some things that you need to check. Make sure that they're all working properly.
Okay.
And Sanjay,
Okay. No problem.
I think you joined after we were talking about the importance of data in problem solving. And so let's take that example of the alloy wheels. If it was me and I had to solve that problem, I'd want to see full, like 100% inspection of at least 200 wheels, if not 500. And then look at the patterns that you can tell from the heat maps and from the Pareto charts. And that sometimes points you right to the source when you can start to look at the patterns over time. And so if you don't have those, if you don't have that data, you're flying blind. You gotta have that data.
Yes.
Do you already have methods of collecting that data?
Yeah, we normally collect the data in the sense of even start from the process. atmospheric temperature, outside temperature, humidity, even spray boot temperature, humidity. Even we check the um, air velocity, dust control, dust count, 5 micron, 10 micron, like that.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
those are
we
important
try to
characteristics
measure.
for operating parameters. What I'm talking about is a heat map that shows you on those alloy wheels where the defects are. So it'd be a picture of your alloy wheel, and on that picture, it shows you where they occur. And you can't do it by looking at 5 parts. You really need 200, 300, 500 parts and look at those patterns.
Yeah. Okay. So
We
I
have,
need to check, rather I need to check more quantity wise dust particles. Then good data will be there, and we can see the analysis in a deeper way.
yeah, we have a set of templates like Excel templates that you can use to track that information or to hand to one of your customers to have them track it. If and they're
Okay.
free. I'll send them to you if you want them.
Yes, sure, please.
Okay. Yeah, and we've also, if it's something that you're interested in, we do have an app that makes that process much easier instead of doing it manually. But I'll send you the templates and take a look at it, and hopefully that'll help you. Our experience, because we've done this many times, is those patterns that you discover after you see 200, 300, 400 parts, they make they make the defects, or they make the root causes a little bit more clear. It's not a guarantee, but it is really helpful to see that pattern over enough parts.
Yeah.
So I think
At
I've
least
got your email.
we should at least we should understand what is the source from this data, and one should attack on such kind of observation, and why this dust is coming from the source. So that I will say, or rather I would like to say, it will help us in minimizing the dust.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
keep us up to date. I'm curious as to what works, what fixes it. So please keep in touch with us too, and let us know how it turns out.
Sure, sure, sure. I have one more question. I don't know how it is related to dust formation while spraying, because normal case we always maintain uh, paint velocity in our mix room. So normally zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5, say. So in this case, do you have any experience, or where you solve the problems by adjusting air velocity, sorry, paint velocity in the paint kitchen to the application point?
Not really. That was never my jurisdiction, as you could say, was more from a preventative maintenance standpoint in mixed rooms. Very seldom did I have people who were, mixing the paint. Couple places I did, for checking velocity, viscosity of the paint itself. I mean, I'm sure you're taking a meter and pouring it in, and you time it, right?
Yes.
And you're saying that it's what, too thick or too thin?
And so by means of adjustment of viscosity by means of back pressure or supply pressure, back pressure, or GPM, gallon per minute. In that way, we can adjust the paint velocity, and we can make paint velocity in the range, say zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 meter per second. In that way, to make paint more running throughout the line, that may also create any issue for dust generation while painting. Maybe sometime the air paint velocity is less than zero point 0.2. That time uniform circulation, I think that may cause uh, dust particle formation.
All right. So what I'm hearing you say, and this might solve your problem, I don't know, but you're telling me that your pressure from your paint vat to the end of the gun is fluctuating. You're not keeping a constant pressure.
Uh, no, just there is no issue of fluctuation, but I thought some issue may be in circulation line where I should check the air paint velocity. If the paint velocity is less, then definitely the chances of paint accumulation, especially in metallic paints, such kind of since metallic paints, example silver, they have rather those paints are made up from aluminum paste,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there are chances where drying of those aluminum paste because of the low velocity of the paint.
okay.
This is my observation. So I'm not sure, but that's why I'm asking you whether this parameter, like the paint velocity, makes any contribution for dust generation while paint application, either by manual or robotic, whatever.
Well, your metal flake particulates like the silver, those paints are always problematic. Just you should know that right from the beginning. What happens a
Mhm.
lot of times, and I'm not saying this is what's wrong with your system, but it's something that you probably should check. I'm not sure when you're a lot of these systems I've worked with, if they shut down on a weekend, they still are running the propeller in the vat, keeping that paint circulating. Number one.
Okay.
Two, you got to keep that system, all your lines got to stay pressured up. Because if you're allowing that to be shut off and your lines are going back in into your vat, that dries inside that line. So when you fire back up again, I got a feeling that your Mondays probably are really, really bad for your first run.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what happens is that
absolutely.
dries up, and then when it fills back up with paint and starts blowing out, it's just like the arteries in our body. And you have a heart attack, the stuff's going to bunch up. It's going to, make things fluctuate a little bit. You're going to have stuff spitting out. And it might look like dust in your paint. So again, a solution is if you got a closed system, which it sounds like you have, again, get with your vendor, your paint vendor, whether it's PPG or whoever, and ask them. Usually they have people that know how to do this. It's called cooking out the system. You got to take the paint out of the vat. You fill it with this chemical, and it's a nasty chemical. I mean, forewarn you, it's nothing you want to be around without a respirator. You pump that into your system and you circulate that for sometimes 24 hours. And then you clean out that vat after everything's flushed out of the system. That'll at least give you a new clean system to start with. But then from there on, you've got to keep that system pressured up. Otherwise, you're going to have problems.
Okay.
Hey, Sanjay, have you already looked at potential shearing within that within your pressure pot?
Uh, I will say there are earlier old days. Yes, I agree with you. Some pressure pots are there, but now in a new, I will say from last 10 years, our industry is progressively improved, and we have very good kind of good quality of paint kitchens. Say for automotive, from paint kitchen to robotic, almost 200 meters will be the distance, and for a small paint shop, um, say for alloy wheel, I will say 2 to 5 meters is the distance from paint kitchen to bale application area. So for a big area, or rather big mm, volumes, where 200 meter is the line from paint kitchen to um, spray application area, say robotic line, definitely the pressure and backflow is very important to maintain the paint velocity in the range of 0.3 to 0.5. but incidentally, those dust particle generations are more towards mica, or you can say silver paste. And air velocity and paint velocity management is more important for such a bigger line. For example, 200 meter from paint kitchen to robotic application.
Mhm.
Hey, Sanjay, not to switch gears here, but go back to the book. It just dawned on me, you can download a digital copy of that book for a lot less
Yeah,
money.
if I get, yeah, that is also possible if I get the uh, web link or any website where I can download by paying some money. That is also okay for me.
Yeah, you should be able to do it like on Amazon.com or like Kindle, Google Play.
Okay,
Just like Google Play will do it. I think there's a couple others too. So try that too. It's only
sure,
like $5.99 or $6.99 US. It's not that much.
sure. That I can do because those are the very insightful information, very useful information for me for troubleshooting.
Now, some of the things that we talked about, does it sound like it's some things that'll help you, or you still feel like you need more information?
Yeah, this is okay. Thank you for your reply.
I was hoping for
And
more than okay. I was hoping for like superb.
Yeah,
well, Sanjay, thanks for coming on and thanks for sharing your question. I agree with David. Keep us updated. We hope you get to a resolution on each of those
sure.
problems.
Yeah, feel
Yeah,
free to send me pictures, send me your questions. I'll be glad to help you.
Definitely, I will post the problems which in general we are facing, and will definitely take your guidelines. Definitely, we are working first on more and more experiments, and the end where we don't understand where the dust is there, then it is very pathetic situation.
Yeah.
Even we clean the pots, pressure lines, even we filter the paint, lot of activity we do, and then we ask such questions why this issue is not sorting out. Definitely this is a very good forum, and your support to solve our issues.
Okay. One thing I'd like to add, and I've only
Yeah,
worked at one plant. Of all the plants I've worked at, this is only one plant that did this. Anytime they make a change or they're doing like an experiment, they had what was called a process change sheet. And they would type up, okay, we're going to try tacking with this other chemical or whatever. We're going to do it for 2 weeks, say. So that's all, printed at the top of the page. You get sign off from the engineer, the people that are doing the job, whichever part of the job it is, all three shifts. If you have a 3-shift operation, um, sign off, maybe the quality engineer, have them sign off on it. And if you're the one implementing it, of course, you would sign off on it. So that gives you a sheet that you hang up in that area right by that process that we are running this trial, this change. Everybody's on board. Everybody understands what we're doing, why we're doing it. And then at the end of that 14 days, or maybe sooner, maybe later, maybe extend it, whatever, change at the top, put a new one up, get everybody sign it, and just really look at, is it working for you or not? Okay. Because it
okay,
might be your new process at the end of it, or it may not. It could
right.
be, okay, we tried that, let's try something else, and then repeat that same process change sheet. I guarantee it'll save you a lot of problems.
Right.
all right.
So this data will normally help a lot to understand the issues.
Mhm.
Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So Sanjay, I'll send you that email and just let us know what else we might be able to do to help. Um, I think
Sure.
we're going to wrap up. I think we're going to wrap up here. We've kept David much longer than we agreed to before, but he was kind enough to stay
Yeah,
on. So Thank you, David.
Oh, no problem.
Appreciate it. And thank you, Sanjay, for joining us. So
Thank you very much.
we're gonna share this. We have been recording, and we're gonna share this on our blog for anybody to look at later. So again,
Sure. Thank you.
thank you. And this has been the 1% Better production series with our guest, David Gable. And our hope with this is to share the knowledge that is out there from the experts in the industry, help people, especially like Sanjay and anybody else who is looking for some help. And 1% Better is powered by ftqapp.com. So if you're looking for a data collection system, we can help. So thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.